Welcome to the Augmentation of Man with Kent and Renee Miller, where we are giving the future.
We're going to talk about today outside intervention plan, which we discussed in another video early on.
So we're going to discuss a little bit about this intervention plan and what that intervention is, what's the reasoning behind it. But first, we need to examine the state of the world today and why we need an intervention.
Well, we pretty much know just by the atmosphere the world is in today, and talking about how to reassure ourselves with this progress that we're in, or not
The
progress,
transformation that we're in.
Yeah.
Mhm.
To start, well, let's examine the world today. What's going on, right? So the truth doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Unless you want to believe one side or the other, and then you think they're telling the truth and the other side is not. And if you do put two people on opposite sides of that, they both think their side tells the truth.
Yeah. And so then we fight about it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So there are 6 top companies that own 90% of the media's outlets.
Mhm.
Okay.
And those companies are AT&T, CBS, Comcast, Viacom, Disney, News Corp. And so if you're flipping between channels, in a given day or even a given week, different channels are using the same lingo. And so you know that they are just reading from a script that's coming from the corporation, right?
Yeah, script goes to the top and passed down. Everybody reads the same script. So it causes,
and they're saying using the same words and the same lingo.
So it causes us to be at odds with each other.
And so we're being brainwashed, essentially, and we're being polarized and we're being deceived. And so this is an agenda to divide and conquer, basically. So
that's old World War adage,
right?
divide and conquer.
So how do you think outside entities would intervene under these conditions to how are they going to get us to unite, for one, and how are they going to introduce the truth to us?
Yeah, well, we have to unite for survival. If the human race is going to survive, we have to learn how to unite.
So we have to get to the core of our belief system, where how it evolves, and our mentors, who are spiritual guides, who Kent hears when he is in deep meditation or a trance. And the way they have taught us is they talk about background environment. And what that background environment is how we were raised, what we were taught, what we were exposed to, people who influenced us, what we read, what we hear on the news, what we hear other people talk about, what our partners believe. All of that forms a belief system that we eventually hold on tight to because we identify with it. So we create this identity, the self-identity, based on these belief systems, which are in fact based on misperceptions. And so we get to this point where we can't even hold a public discourse or conversation. We can't even discuss this rationally, because when we're brainwashed, then we're just regurgitating what we've heard instead of having an intellectual conversation.
Well, these so-called competing companies, but they're not really competing with each other. They're competing for the mindset. So they mold the humanity in the way they want to so we view the world
the way they want us to see
view
it.
And even though they call it a competition, it's not really competition. This causes confusion, causes infighting among the humans, and people don't get
Disunity.
along.
Yes.
Yeah.
And even, you know, we're being conditioned to outside of our own borders, we're being conditioned to demonize other countries so that we will eventually accept the prospect of war, and the military industrial complexes need to keep engaging in
Well,
war.
all these different agendas that are out there, they're meant to divide us so we can be conquered.
Mhm. And manipulated.
Yeah.
And so if we're going to correct humanity's course, say we are an outside entity, we have to look at how we can bring that group of people to a more comprehensive truth so that they can move forward in their level of understanding. And essentially it breaks down this system. What they're going to be introducing is going to break down the system of deception.
We need an outside entity or entities. We need them to come in and take over all of humanity, unite humanity, because mankind, humanity cannot unite itself.
And we're on a course for self-destruction.
Correct. So we need an outside entity to stop this and to unite humanity.
And this is also about our survival in doing so. And so what we're going to do is share our screen, and
you can see the meditations when I had gotten them.
What we're going to talk about or bring forth the lesson as it was given to Kent verbatim. And this is where we're going as humanity, where we have to put a little work into our expanding consciousness. And the reason why they use this language is to cause us to dig deeper, to do the homework. And when you do this homework, trying to decipher this language, which is rooted, most of it is rooted in Greek and Latin root words, then when you have that epiphany, you have such a deep and profound understanding. This light bulb comes on and you really shift in your level of understanding.
See, my head looks like a light bulb. Is that what you're trying to say? No. So I kept hearing the word narcosis, which I've never heard that word. And I kept hearing it over and over and over again.
And this was just a couple of days ago.
And I kept, what is narcosis? And then I heard a virtuous atmosphere will prevail. So Renee did the research as usual.
First of all, I asked, when might this happen?
Well, prevailing understanding must happen first.
And so when you start to decipher this, so we'll go over this. Narcosis, narc, comes really from like a drug or narcotic, but it can also mean, osis means a condition of, and narc can mean a diminished mental acuity or responsiveness to stimuli. In the sense, traditionally, it's in the sense of being drugged or asleep. But in this sense, they're using it as a metaphor for the teachings or learning. So humanity is in a condition of diminished mental acuity, and there's definite obstructions to our ability to expand our consciousness.
So you think humanity is like being asleep or drugged.
Right. And prevailing understanding, well, let's back up. A virtuous atmosphere will prevail. So virtuous means conforming to like a moral standard. And an atmosphere is the surrounding mood. In this sense, the surrounding mood or environment. So it's a virtuous, it's a upstanding environment that will be widespread, because prevail can also mean widespread among other definitions, and we'll go into that too. So this prevailing understanding, they're telling us, must happen.
So it says drop all borders. In other words, all countries must drop their borders. This is how humanity will unite. Borders have caused this disillusionment, caused power grabs, has caused everything.
Wars.
So prevent, yeah, so all borders of all countries
Mhm.
have to be dropped. And you're
And
thinking, oh, that means people will travel back and forth everywhere. Correct. We will figure out a new government, a new way of dealing with those that live in England and come over to Scotland or go to different European countries, or Canadians and US and South Americans. It will all eventually level itself out. But the thing is, it will unite humanity under one roof.
Mhm. And so in another meditation going back, and I haven't included it here, it said that no borders as the creator originally intended. So these separate countries were never really intended to occur. And they're saying that there will be a blending of the people, so that we will come to appreciate our differences and our backgrounds, instead of using it as a source of division.
Like when people travel to a different land, the land of Israel, the land of Egypt, the land of whatever, it doesn't mean you have to change the town names. You don't call this A, B, C, D. You don't put the names of each country and put up fences
Mhm.
and cause people, oh, let me see your papers before you come in to my country.
Mhm. And what they have told us, and it's not in this outline here, but that people will go to specific areas to live based on that, the vibration of that area, what resonates with
Yeah,
you.
and they will work there, and whether it be growing food or
Mhm.
or industry or whatever, but they will work there.
And mind you, as we presented in the last video, there's going to be a great reduction in the population. People at the soul level already know whether they are the ones that are going to continue and start this new cycle, this new era, or that they have chosen to exit out at this time in a physical death.
Yeah,
Here to the
balance of dignity. And dignity is extremely important to all humans, that they want dignity. And
yeah, but in this sense, there's a different definition for
yes,
it.
that's
Okay.
true.
So when we talk about prevalence, they didn't say prevalence, they said prevalence.
Mhm.
So I went to prevalence, and I looked at it, the definitions, to see how it fit in this sentence of prevalence of dignity. Didn't really, I mean, it could have fit, but then you have to look at the other surrounding messages, right? And so when pre means before, and when I looked up valence, so there's a chemistry definition for valence, but there's not also another definition
Way down at the bottom of the definitions.
right? And it's the capacity of one person to affect another in some special way by attraction or facilitation of a function or an activity. And so then when you move on to dignity, dignity means can mean a relative standing or rank. And so to me, what this is saying is that there is the outsiders that are going to come and they're going to engage humanity in a very specific way, and they're going to facilitate an activity of bringing humanity forward in their level of understanding. And the dignity reflects the difference in rank. So they are, the outside entities are of a higher conscious value, and humanity is of a lower conscious value, and they are going to be working with us to bring us up to a higher consciousness.
So and they said cursorance will prevail.
Mhm. And so cursorance is the ability to get someone adapted for running or taking off, moving rapidly
Moving
forward.
forward, right?
And in this sense, it is in our level of understanding. So once all this starts to take place, we are going to take off as a race in our level of understanding. We are going to have, they've told us, massive learning for the next 5 years. And this prevalence to understanding their value is also relative to how they're going to be affecting humanity in a special way, so that we understand how much smarter they are than we are.
Yeah.
And the value that they possess is in how they can teach us, and the knowledge that they can share to bring us to a higher state.
Yes. So we have to understand their value. We can't go in with our ego and saying, we know more than you, or we're better than you. We got to drop all that. So
Mhm. That egotistical,
can
arrogant
really
attitude,
mess up our
they
society.
it can,
Well, it
because
has
it is
already.
very distasteful to these outside entities, the arrogance
Yeah.
of man, because they look at man as being, we are so misled. We have so much lack of understanding. There's so much misperception that exists, and yet we're so arrogant and think that we know it all.
Yeah. So Renee asked the question, well, all borders between countries, how's it going to be dissolved?
Mhm.
And it says must happen. These borders must be dissolved. It must happen to unite. Grievance will prevail now. Overture of hunger. That was interesting. A displeasure of a heavy among humanity.
So this doesn't make a lot of sense in the way that we communicate. And that is because our language has really been dumbed down. And we're going to discuss that in a little while. But they're telling us, of course, what is very clear. These borders have to be dissolved in order to unite humanity. The grievance is our complaints or our resentment will prevail now. Prevail is also used in the sense of currently. Currently, we're going to have a food shortage. It's already developing. And there's going to be this overture of hunger that is causing our grievances.
And there's lack of food.
A lack of food.
You're gonna get real hungry.
And it's real hard to think about your expanding consciousness when you don't have food and you're thinking about your very survival. So a displeasure of heavy among humanity. So heavy can also mean of great force. So there's this great displeasure, this very heavy weighing upon humanity, a great force that is related to our very survival.
Yeah, right now, and you can start to feel this force now.
Okay, so the next question was, how will the borders dissolve?
Okay, so no tenure. if you've been to college, you know that professors have tenure, and they pretty much are permanently put in that position. It says no tenure.
But in this sense, tenure is used in kind of a different
But kind of different,
different
but yet,
way.
But yet the people understand how tenure is,
Yeah.
what tenure is. So comprehensive this is an interesting word. Unitology. We had a hard time saying that. Unitology, to play out. A voracious appetite for truth. Deception will prevail.
Okay. So non-tenure, tenure meaning the holding or possessing of anything, and that includes property. So they're saying that you know, well, let me put it this way. Years ago, we were always corrected when we talked about our house, our property, that sort of thing with our guides. They would say, you own nothing. You are the caretakers of the land.
Yeah, like the native people, the indigenous people believe they are caretakers of all the lands. They use the lands for food and different things, but they are only the caretakers. And we were told early on in our meditation, in my meditations, that we are only caretakers of this earth.
And we need to be good caretakers. But when you think about it, we don't leave with this in our possession. We may leave it to our children, but we don't take it with us. And when we exit this world, and in the current system, which is dissolving, we buy land, so therefore we have dominion over it, and we possession over it, right?
Yeah, look what I have. Look
Yes.
what I have.
But in the future, that's going to change. And I imagine, I'm guessing at this point, but I imagine that we won't be purchasing land, we won't be buying it, but yet we will be sharing everything equally as the creator intended. And this was from another message.
Or growing things on the land, but sharing the whatever we grow with all others.
Yes, much like the native peoples and the indigenous peoples did in times past. Everything was shared equally, and everybody carried the equal burden of the sustainability of the tribe.
Right.
So getting back to comprehensive unitology to play out. So when I looked up unitology, I found unitive, and I think that these two are derivatives of the same base word, unit. And unitive means knowledge of that which is capable of causing unity. So comprehensive, having an extensive range, an extensive understanding of what it's going to take for unity to play out. And then a voracious appetite for truth. So having truth is a part of this picture, because when you have one truth, your truth, and someone else has another truth, and I have another truth, we all start bickering and fighting and trying to overtalk each other because we all think we're right. But the fact of the matter is, the very fact that we're fighting about what the truth is means that we don't have the truth. It doesn't exist. We may have parts of it, but we don't have a comprehensive truth. And so we are going to develop this very intense desire
to come together,
consume information in search of truth. And
so when you say tomato, that tomato is red. We both will agree it's red.
Yeah, so they're trying to get us to a point where we see a more comprehensive truth, a bigger picture, so that we're all on the same page and we're not bickering about who's right and who's wrong. Okay. But they're saying that deception will still prevail.
Deception will be widespread.
So how is that going to unite us? So let's move on. We're going to cover that.
Okay.
We're going to cover it. So there's going to be a shift in our attitude.
Yeah, a prolapsed attitude will begin. Correctional understanding must happen. Ostentatious movement to begin.
Okay, so let's dissect this one. Prolapsed. A lot of women understand that word, but it means to slip out of position. Okay. And we're not going in the bodily definition of that. So they're talking about our attitude is going to move. It's going to shift, and that it will begin soon. Correctional understanding must happen. And ostentatious movement. So ostentatious is similar to ostensible, which is outwardly evident. So this movement is going to be quite evident when it starts. When it starts, yeah, we're going to notice a big shift in our environment.
So what will create the conditions for deception to be overturned? That was Renee's question. And what can cause deception to be overturned is unity of thought.
And so here we are again. We're not arguing about who's right and who's wrong, but that we all have the same understanding and we're unified in that thought and that understanding.
A phrase that Mark Twain used, he says, if you don't read the newspaper, then you are uninformed. But if you read the newspaper or watch the news, you are misinformed. So what you want to be, uninformed or misinformed?
And so these outside entities, they have quite a task ahead of them to bring humanity together into this unity of thought, one thought. And so we have to understand moving forward, how we have been played, how we've been misinformed, how our perceptions have not been on target. And this puts us at odds with one another. The way that we perceive events playing out in this three-dimensional world is not the way that the universe sees it or other universal beings. And in the near future, these other beings will be helping us to understand a different truth, which is called a universal truth, and more in the sense of how the universal beings see it. This will bring unity of thought to humanity. When we all understand the same truth, then deception fails and we unite.
Interesting.
So this is a meditation. We're kind of going back to December of 2014, and we're going to talk about language.
Communication and language is so important. So the human language has gotten to be absurd for understanding. A creative misconception of meaning, the egotistical behavior of the author. Ancient languages were more descriptive and direct. So copulation, oscillation through time created false language directive. Presumptuous is best for this language. And the language has been totally turned on its head. That we don't know how to direct one another with a language that we can understand. When a person says something in this new language and ever developing, what are they talking about? Many things.
You know, the way I look at this is if you go back to these ancient, or not even ancient, these old texts that are 200 years old, look at the Constitution, look at the you know, some of these old documents.
These old books that were written.
the Bill of Rights, it's really hard to comprehend. And our language has disintegrated over the last 200
It's
years.
become senseless, basically, a lot of the language.
Right. And let's face it, a lot of our language has been replaced by slang and by curse words. And so the original intent of language is the transference of an understanding. That is how we were, or why we were given this FOXP2 gene, that is the gene that is inscripted in our DNA that affects an area of our brain that is responsible for speech and language. It is only for the purpose of transferring an understanding, even if that understanding is, I am talking to you because I want you to understand my feelings and how I feel about this situation. We can't do it if this language has been dumbed down, because we can't adequately transfer that knowledge from one person to another.
Yeah, well, the different meanings, like egotistical and obsessive reference to oneself, and misconception and erroneous opinion. So these different things, when you look at the meaning of them and you put it in context of what was said, it makes kind of
It
sense.
starts to make sense, but we have to rewire the way that we're thinking, and we're going to have help with that, because we also have a genetic upgrade that is taking place that is going to help our brain be able to process this information at a higher level. And the reason why we give these messages to you in its original form is so that you can see how it comes across when these entities are talking to you. They're going to talk to you differently than what we are used to.
Yeah.
And we're teaching you how to decipher this language when it starts to happen to you. So they're telling us the human language is absurd for understanding, which means it's utterly senseless. They just don't see the modern language as it is today as having much value. A creative misconception of meaning through egotistical behavior of the author. So egotistical is when I'm always trying to draw attention to myself, but we're using the language such as the slang or the curse words to bring this attention to ourselves, but it's creating this erroneous opinion or meaning
to the self. Yeah.
Instead of bringing attention, is just creating this error in understanding on behalf of the author or the one who's talking or presenting that language. So they're telling us that the ancient language was more descriptive and direct. Now, here's a word that we get into, the mind always goes to the bedroom, right?
Yeah.
So copulation, oscillation.
Together.
Copulation means to join together, and oscillation is to, in this sense, the way that I have deciphered it is to vacillate between two different beliefs or opinions that we have been coupling these terms that mean different thing. And it creates this false language directive, which is this using language in an incorrect way that's directing us in on a pathway, right?
Yeah, false direction.
And so presumptuous, meaning it goes into assumptions. So we're using, when we're trying to decipher the language that somebody's using, we oftentimes are assuming what they mean.
That's right. And we do a lot of assuming in the human language.
We do.
So the purpose of language, the basics of language, it says the transference of knowledge and ideas through written and verbal means. So enables the ability to think, conceptualize, and organize information. So our language has devolved, that is devolved into a dialect comprised of mostly slang.
And this
So-
makes it difficult to adequately transfer knowledge, ideas, and feelings. And so we're getting to a point where we have to reverse course and we must adopt a more sophisticated way of communicating in order to receive these universal teachings that are conceptual in nature. So the previous meditations that we had on the screen are part of that conceptual understanding or conceptual teaching that outside entities use to transfer knowledge and
Yeah,
understanding.
again, humanity is going through a genetic upgrade to
Mhm,
be able to process the new information at a higher level
mhm.
for conceptual learning. We've been talking about conceptual learning for years now. So it is a neurochemical change in our brains.
Mhm. And these chemicals, they interact with the nerves and they are actually responding to the way that or create the way that our brain responds to language and how it understands us through a neurochemical means. And we also have to come to understand the true value of words and what they really mean. So when we're growing up and we're learning language, we learn a very narrow or myopic description of what that word is. And when you start using your dictionaries, and if you don't have one, you really need to get one, because there are a whole lot more definitions that are incorporated in those words that are going to be used and brought up when this
Right.
communication
Yeah,
starts.
we are so narrow in our communication. It is interesting how we don't understand each other because it is so narrow.
Yeah. To recap the plan.
Okay, humanity is going through genetic change. Okay. To enable the brain to process a higher level of information and understanding. There will be a shift in attitude and a voracious appetite for truth will develop. Can't wait. A more sophisticated language will have to be developed, will be introduced for conceptual learning.
So obstructions to unity will be removed. And this is a quote that was given to us in another meditation years ago. And that is, we will start anew one last time. We will get it right. And they're talking about themselves, these outside entities, but possibly all of us, the humanity too. No countries, no boundaries, no lines.
Yeah, a lot of people are going to have a hard time accepting this. But
Yeah.
in order for humankind to survive this new horizon, we're going to have to say no countries, no boundaries, no lines.
Yeah, and we have to change.
We have to.
Yeah, and the creator is not going to help us unless we're willing to go along with the changes.
Yeah, and there'll still be a lot of deception because there'll be those that want power and want to deceive all those around them so they can stay in power. But we have to understand, we have to unite.
But this correctional understanding that's going to be introduced by these outside entities is going to, once it unites humanity into a greater understanding, that deception holds no weight and it is upended. So all those negative entities that have been trying to deceive us, trying to manipulate us, it won't go anymore. It just won't happen because we will have a more comprehensive understanding.
So are you ready for a new reality? Are you ready to accept the people around you as part of humanity and not saying those people don't belong here, those people don't belong here, whatever? Are you willing? Are you ready to start this new beginning, the new truth?
And also, when you start talking about the borders coming down to the countries, you start to realize that all these races are going to start blending. And they have informed us in a different meditation that the races will begin to blend, and
Even
that
more.
yeah, that will further unify people, because we won't be divided based on our skin color.
Yeah, it won't be in skin color, because ones that speak French, there are various skin colors. So you may fall in love with a French woman or a French man, or a German woman, German man, or a Ukrainian. There's many options on this earth. And many times we have to explore these options in order to learn the truth.
But celebrate too, celebrate our differences and our different cultures, because they're so interesting to explore, right? When you go to another country, you're diving in and you're learning about the language, and you're learning about the different historical sites.
Yeah, just
and
don't take a
the
tour, but learn
food.
about the people and the food,
Yeah,
and put yourself in being there. Just don't go to the different tourist things, but immerse yourself in the people and
and the culture.
the culture.
And that is the beauty in the differences that exist today, that may not exist in the future, but we will have a more united country, world. Yeah.
Yes. If we want to join the rest of the universe, we have to unite in this particular world.
I just want to remind those who are new to our channel that we have 2 books that have been published on Amazon under the Augmentation of Man, A Study in Renaissance. This is more basics in spirituality, and The Acquiescence of Humanity. This is our going back our relationship with extraterrestrials, and how humanity got here and where we're going. And that includes the genetic manipulation that is going to occur to bring us up to a higher level of comprehension and the ability to learn these conceptual ideas.
So with that, I'd like to say thanks for joining us, and think in your mind, think unity. How do we go about uniting humanity with each other?
A lot to process there, especially with some of these agendas that have the hair standing on our necks today. But there is a plan.
Spread this word. Spread this word. That will help unite all humanity.
Yeah, and please pass on this video to others of like mind. Thank you for joining us. Do subscribe, hit the bell, and that way you'll receive our videos as soon as they're out. Okay. Have a great day. Take care.